Peace and good health to you in this time of the COVID-19 virus. My name is Dan. I'm not in the 12-step program, but I've been a support in the program for many years. And so at Mount St. Francis, which is where I'm from, we've been doing Serenity Twilight Retreats. And the theme that we've chosen are the different promises from the Big Book. And so if we think of a promise, we think of it as a signpost. It kind of directs us. If I do this, and then this will happen. Many years ago, my first time I went to Tokyo, I had a challenge getting to my hostel. But at the last train stop that I was at, there was a sign actually with the hostel on it. And so I could look at the sign, and I kind of memorized it, and then I made my way to the hostel. I got probably a quarter of the way there, and I had to turn around and come back to the sign. At least I could find my way to the sign. But the sign was at least an indication that I was close to the hostel. It was quite exciting to actually see the hostel on that sign. And so sometimes these promises can seem like pies in the sky, and they can be a little bit overwhelming. Like, is that really going to happen in my life? And the reality is, yes, many people in the program would say these promises become a part of our lives when we put the 12 steps into practice. And so the promise that I'm going to speak about today is, once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. Now, this comes from page 75 of the Big Book, and this is connected with the fifth step. So in the fifth step, the Big Book encourages us to withhold nothing, and then we can be delighted, and we can look the world in the eye. I often listen to fifth steps, and a very common thing when people come for their fifth step is they're nervous. And then what's very interesting is most times once they're finished, they say to me, I feel better, or I feel good now. So they actually experience that moment of delight. And they also have the ability to look the world in the eye after a fifth step. But the question I will throw out there is, what does it mean to look the world in the eye? And what it really means is to be able to, with confidence and peace, look at the world, look at others. And if you notice, if you're ever at odds with somebody, or you've been dishonest with somebody, it's really hard to look people in the eye. And so how important it is that we can be at ease with ourselves, and we can be at ease with others. Now, of course, we know that this takes effort. This doesn't necessarily always come without challenges, but that's the challenge of life for everyone. But the other point about looking the world in the eye is, who do we look at when we look in a mirror? Well, obviously we look at ourselves, and so we have to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror with confidence, and also with ease. And so I remember a few years ago, well, actually it was many years ago, when I was a teenager, a group of us, we'd get off the bus all at the same time, and we had this great idea to start throwing snowballs at the bus. And this went on for a few days, and then finally it was a Friday, and we would get off the bus would go up one road and then come back down the same road. And so we could wait and we could throw snowballs at the bus. Then it would go up another road and then come back. So we had 3 opportunities to throw snowballs at the bus. And so in the last opportunity, the bus driver, he's probably doing about 80 kilometers an hour coming down the road. We've been making snowballs for the last 10, 15 minutes. We've been making ice balls, in other words. And this is probably the one time where I kind of wish that I wasn't really all that good at throwing snowballs. And threw the snowball up, and I didn't know really at that point in time what happened, although the bus driver did kind of slow down, but he just kept going. So we thought all was well, but we also we ran off too. But on Sunday night, I got a phone call, and the bus driver, he said to me, he said, yeah, you broke the bus window. But he said, we all ought to pitch in. And he took part of the blame because he was kind of egging us on. And I thought, good for him. Good on the bus driver. So we all were going to pitch in, no big deal. And so in the morning, though, I did have to look the window in the eye. It was definitely busted. I had to look the bus driver in the eye, and it was a little bit awkward, I have to admit. But anyway, I found my way to my seat, and I made my way to school. And all was well. I'm learning all kinds of things. No, I probably wasn't. I'm probably off in Zuzu land. And the principal comes to the classroom, and she wants to talk to me. And I'm like, oh, what's this all about? So I go to her office, and she doesn't say anything on the way, and we're not really making any sort of eye contact. And then she gives me the big stare down. She's like, what would ever possess you to throw snowballs at a bus? And I really had no answer or any good answer, except it's fun. Give it a try. But of course, how do you say that? So I was very quiet as a kid, so I don't even think I said anything. It was really hard for me to look the principal in the eye at that moment. But we have to work at it, and we have to try to look people in the eye, and also look ourselves with confidence and ease. Now, when I say confidence, I don't mean arrogance, like, oh yeah, man, I'm the best, And chances are, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, oh, I guess I better comb my hair, or I better brush my teeth. And it probably are the least of our worries of what we have to face. But nonetheless, it's good for us to do that. And part of what helps us to face ourselves is the fourth step, the fearless moral inventory. Now, when we do this moral inventory, of course, that nobody is really going to find out about a lot of these things. It's just the pen and paper, and our higher power is aware of what's going on. That's it. But, sometimes as we start to write, our thoughts can take over. And we have to be careful that, sometimes our thoughts are not all that trustworthy. And what I mean by that is we've all had thoughts that just kind of pop out of nowhere. It's like, oh, where did that thought come from? And we cannot actually keep up to our thoughts. In other words, our thoughts don't always become our words, don't always become our actions. And so sometimes I think we have to just be able to let some of our thoughts go and not define ourselves by our thoughts, even as we write our fourth step. The other thing in the fourth step is it's not meant to be something that makes us proud. Wow, am I ever good? Look at everything I've been through, and I'm still here. I'm so good. That's not really the purpose. But on the other end of the spectrum, we don't want to see this as a self-bashing. I'm no good for nothing. I'm useless. I mean, what good is that for anyone? And so we really have to, ultimately in the fourth step, we have to be able to love ourselves. We put it all there on paper. We are honest with ourselves. No sense in being dishonest. And then this will help us to accept us. Accept our shortcomings, accept our faults, also accept our strengths in this fearless inventory. But also another part of the fourth step is detective work. What are the causes that led to my addiction? Or what may be a cause that will lead me back to my addiction? And so it's kind of detective work that we're doing. It's self-discovery work that we're doing. It was a couple summers ago, I was up in my office, and most of the friars were gone on their holidays, and all of a sudden I heard this loud bang. And so I come down the stairs with my detective work bag. I got to figure out what was that loud bang. So I asked Louis, I said, Louis, did you hear that loud bang? He's like, no, I didn't hear anything. Louis has good hearing, so I'm surprised he didn't hear it. So I walked around, nothing, everything looks okay, so that's fine. So we just go to bed and then gather for breakfast in the morning, and there's 3 of us at the table, and we look outside, or one of the other friars looks outside, and all the deck furniture is gone. And then it dawns on me, that's what the loud bang was. So we looked over, and sure enough, all the deck furniture was on the ground, and it's about 12 feet from the deck to the ground. So that's what the loud bang was. But my detective work went to high gear, and I'm like, dang it, those old fogies again, up to no good. And so that's really what we're doing in the 4th step, is we are discovering ourselves, we are discovering our bad habits. And we want to turn our bad habits into good habits. Like, I'll give you an example, like cheering for the Calgary Flames. Now that's a bad habit. Now the reason I say that is because there's no hockey right now. Also, there'll likely be no playoff hockey, right, this year. And so why cheer for the Calgary Flames? It's a bad habit. You're better off to take up knitting and knit a scarf or a toque or a sweater for somebody who might be feeling lonely. Isn't that a better habit to take on? And also part of the 4th step is, if we're going to look the world in the eye, we have to be able to look at our inner reality in the eye. Things that have gone on and are going on. And so it's kind of like, if somebody is grumpy, chances are it's because they're grumpy on the inside. If somebody is hope-filled on the inside, likely they're hope-filled on the outside. And so the inner work that we do allows us to face our outer work. And so this really puts importance on the 4th step, allowing us to do that. Now, when it comes to the 5th step, we can, we might want to skip this one, because you know what? I figured out my bad habits. I figured out what I need to do in my life to become a better person. And you know what? That's good. I'll just move on to the 6th step. But the 5th step is very important. As the big book says, it's a way to keep us humble. But it's also a way for us to receive a love from somebody else. And assuming most 5th steps are a good experience, we share a lot of sensitive information. The person who hears us is kind to us, is patient with our shortcomings, and they listen to us. These are all expressions of love. And so in the 4th step, we're learning to love and accept ourselves. In the 5th step, we're allowing another human being to love us. And so this is the benefit of these 2 steps. Many years ago, the Irish monks, they used to confess their shortcomings or their sins each and every day. Now, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, did they do really bad things every day? Well, likely they didn't. But what they were doing is they were coming to an awareness of what could possibly lead to them to addiction. So sometimes when we're doing the 4th step or even the 5th step, the whole process, we learn new insights. We learn new things about ourselves, and that in itself can be quite exciting. And we also learn to be more patient with others. And Bill W. says in the big book that if we don't do the 4th and the 5th step, then we cannot be sober. And also, once you've hit the 12th step, you don't graduate. You start back at the 1st step. Maybe it's also meant to keep us humble. And we want to continue to work the steps because we don't want to become, as I hear from time to time, the expression dry drunk. Now, a dry drunk is somebody that is not caught up in their addiction like alcohol or drugs, and yet they're leading a dysfunctional, dangerous, and destructive life. And so we don't want to go there. And so the program is more than just giving up a certain addictive substance. It's also helping us to become the best that we can be. And another important thing to remember is our higher power. Now, we have to look at our higher power as being on our side. Because if any moment of human history the higher power was against humanity, likely we would not exist. I mean, the higher power would have finished us off ages ago. And so we have to believe our higher power is on our side. And even when we weren't on our own side, we have to believe our higher power was always on our side. And a lot of people that I hear in their fifth step say, I'm alive today, obviously, because some being has my back. In other words, the higher power has my back. And the other part is the higher power wants the best for us. And so that's encouraging, and that's the way we have to look at our higher power. And unfortunately, sometimes I hear of people who've had a bad upbringing in religion. Although let's not blame our higher power on the way that others unveil religion to us. One of the things I do in my prayer is I often light a candle. Now, and I never realized this till I started lighting a candle, but the one thing that the candle does for me is it gets me outside of myself. Even the big book says this, that selfishness is one of the things we all deal with, one of the things we're trying to overcome. And I'm referring to selfishness, not self-care. Self-care is important, especially in this COVID-19 situation. But the candle helps me to focus beyond myself. It's a way to focus to God. But it's also, I can use that same practice when I relate with others. I can look at what are their needs, what can I do to help them, or to journey with them to make their life better, to get outside of myself. And so I especially give thanks to Louis, who often makes the candles that I use. And when I thought of this promise, about, withholding nothing, being delighted, and looking the world in the eye, I also thought of the 9th step about making amends. This is an opportunity to face somebody to make amends. And, assuming that it goes well, how much easier it is after this amend to look the person in the eye. Now, if it doesn't go so well, at least you've taken the opportunity to look the person in the eye and to take responsibility for your wrongdoing. So it's beautiful, beautiful practice. In my life, I've had to ask different people for forgiveness or to say I'm sorry. And actually to even say that, whether it's one of the friars or whether it's a family member, is actually quite relieving. Even unknowing of how that person is going to respond, just to take my own responsibility to kind of stop the hamster from going crazy in my head. The other advantage of working through the 4th and the 5th step, and also the 9th step, is we learn compassion. We've likely faced our own shortcomings and wrongdoings. And who am I to judge others if I have these shortcomings and wrongdoings? And I may have different sin than other people, but it doesn't we're all in this together. And so part of the process is to make us to be compassionate. We want to help alleviate the sufferings of other people, knowing that we also have our own suffering in life. We can't get around that. It's a reality of life. The other important thing, and this is very important in the program, is fellowship or friendship. In this time of the COVID-19 situation, it's difficult to have fellowship and friendship. In World War I, they had a buddy system, which means each soldier had a friend. And it was up to you to protect your friend, and your friend would also protect you. And if need be, they would help you if you were wounded somehow. And so this friendship was a matter of life and death. And often or sometimes when these soldiers came home, they continued this friendship because they recognized that how valuable and how life-giving that friendship really is. To be able to have one person or even two people in our lives who we can just be honest with. When they ask how you're doing, you can say, well, from this perspective, I'm doing really horrible. From this perspective, I'm doing okay, and this is why. These are the things I'm grateful for. You just let it all out. So friendship itself is life-giving. But when we're dishonest and we were stuck in our addiction, it's really hard to develop friends. And often we become more and more isolated, and we miss out on the life-giving experience of friendship. And so, this is always an important time for us to maybe reach out. It was a few days ago, I phoned a friend that I hadn't talked to in probably 8 months, and we talked on the phone for about 2 hours. Well, he did most of the talking. But there it was, just taking the time to reconnect with people I wouldn't normally connect with on a regular basis that I ought to. And so I'd like to close out this talk with a prayer, and I'd like to use the Serenity Prayer. I feel like, even before the COVID-19 situation, we really didn't have a lot of control over things. But I think now with the uncertainty, we're definitely in that experience of no control. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share parts of the prayer. I've broken it up into 3 parts, and I have some questions or a question with each part just for you to ponder and to meditate on and pray with. So let us pray. God, grant me the serenity. What fear or resentment blocks my serenity? What am I content with at this time? In other words, what am I grateful for? To accept the things I cannot change. What things can I not change? Courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. What courageous thing or things can I change? What person is on my heart that could use a text message, a phone call, or video conference? And so I'd like to thank you for listening to this video, and may you continue to be able to look the world in the eye with confidence, with ease, to be delightful. And I almost forgot, I like to close actually with a poem. And this poem was written by the man in the glass. Now for the women who are watching this video, I'm going to change it to one, so it's more inclusive. This is by Peter Dale Wimbrow Sr. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king or queen for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that one has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. He's the person to please, never mind all the rest. For one's with you clear to the end, and you've passed your most difficult, dangerous test if the one in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathways of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the one in the glass. And so may you also look at yourself in the mirror with confidence and ease and peace.